Joining us is the editor for Resurgent and Fox News contributor Erick Erickson. Erick, in terms of the Republican priorities, what is #1 in your mind?
Obamacare. They've been campaigning on it for a number of years now, and in fact are prone to say on the campaign trail that every Republican's voted to repeal it 70 some odd times. It would have been repealed but for Barack Obama. Day one, I think they're going to begin processing this, and that's also why the Democrats are trying to block Tom Price, the incoming Health and Human Services Secretary. He's a doctor from Georgia, congressman who has a plan to replace Obamacare. They desperately don't want him confirmed because of it.
But do the Democrats have any political ammunition? What you've heard out of House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, the Republicans have a firm majority in the Senate. Is there anything that they can do to get in the way of the cabinet nominees or any of these initiatives?
As long as the Republicans stick together, they can't in the Senate because you've got 52 Republicans, although a couple of them have questions about Rex Tillerson and a few of the other picks by Trump. But generally, no, the Republicans are going to set up the budget resolution for 2017 to make it so they can't even filibuster to stop the repeal of Obamacare. In fact, the Republicans are doing exactly what Harry Reid and Chuck Schumer did to get Obamacare passed in the first place. Dangerous precedents Democrats didn't care about back then. They're really worried about now.
Steve, Erick says repeal and replace Obamacare, but looking at these markets since Trump was elected, I would argue that tax reform, cutting corporate taxes, and regulation rollback are the first three things that the Republicans have got to tackle.
Well, on Obamacare,
you can shoot me down if you want to.
No, you're too bright for that. but on Obamacare, yeah, they can say they're going to start the process, repeal, and then figure out how to replace the thing. But that they have to do. But the key thing in terms of real work they have to do, as you say, get that tax cut through. Propose it, get a big one through. Don't worry about projections of deficits from OMB and everyone else, Congressional Budget Office, saying you can't do this kind of thing. Do it, because if people don't see economic progress soon, Trump is going to lose political capital. If he has that political capital, he can do things on health care over the next 12 months and have the standing to do it. And in terms of the Democrats delaying those nominees, it's just pettiness. They should just ram them through.
Morgan.
One of the most important things, Dagan, about getting this big agenda through is to actually get the cabinet nominees confirmed that can carry out the agenda. I think it's one of the most impressive cabinets that we've seen nominated in modern history. And Erick, I don't know what you think, but I think it's a huge strategic miscalculation for the Democrats to go after the cabinet nominees for being successful at business. I think this is the strategy that was deployed against Trump in the general election by the Democrats to go after being, the fact that he's a billionaire and his business dealings around the world. It didn't work. Clearly, he won. So I think if they employ that same strategy to go after his nominees just simply because they're successful in business, I think it's going to backfire. And honestly, I have no problem putting them on record for how they feel about successful business people.
Yeah, listen, I completely agree with that. When you look at what the Democrats did in 2009, they and Republicans together, by unanimous consent, confirmed about 9 of Barack Obama's cabinet picks on the very first day, January 20th, when Obama was sworn in. That was their gift to him as he came in. If they don't do the same for the Republicans, one, it just looks like sour grapes. They can't get over Merrick Garland. But two, you are holding up some very successful people from getting to work. The election fooled a lot of us. Got everyone surprised. There are 10 Democrats in states that Trump won, and they're going to be held accountable by the voters if they try to stymie these incoming cabinet picks.
Hey, Tony, I think this is my own conspiracy theory, but part of what is behind the sanctions against Russia over hacking is related to the confirmation of Rex Tillerson. And it is shining a spotlight on some Republicans saying, hey, you got to give this guy a hard time when he comes up for his confirmation hearing. I think because those sanctions look purely political at this point, given the timing.
People all unanimously agree, even those who support sanctions, that it's too late to really have Barack Obama imposing this type of policy. He's been very weak-kneed when it's come to managing and maneuvering around Vladimir Putin for 8 years, and now in the closing days of his administration, he decides to do something punitive like this that's going to really have no net result. That's the other part of this. He's doing this to what end, right? So that's number one. Number two, look, Rex Tillerson is basically a acts like a Secretary of State in the job he does. He's the president and the chief executive of the largest oil and energy company in the world. He negotiates deals. He uses diplomacy. He uses leverage. His credentials are really unmatched, I think, for the job of Secretary of State. So I agree with Eric. You know, Chuck Schumer and getting all his red state Democrats to start picking silly, petty battles is a terrible way to start off what's going to be a very difficult 2-year cycle for them, right, Eric, as they enter a much more difficult Senate landscape in 2018, where they can even lose a larger amount of seats and potentially Republicans get closer to 60, which then would render them useless in the next Congress if you have a lot of those Democrats losing because they're picking Chuck Schumer's silly battles.
Yeah, the Republicans have only 8 seats coming up in 2018, Democrats 25. And by the way, having Russia involved in our election, how about President Obama trying to knock out Bibi Netanyahu several years ago in the Israeli elections? They put in money, they put in personnel, so this intervention charge, come on, guys.
That is a terrific point, Steve. Eric, what were you going to say?
Well, you know, I'll one-up you on the conspiracy talk on Russia. I don't think it was a coincidence that the loudest voices about Russia happened the week before the Electoral College met, as Democrats thought they could pick off about 20 Republicans in the Electoral College. Once they met that Monday, suddenly you didn't hear a lot about Russia anymore. It fell out of the media until this past week, when the White House released a report that specifically said there was no evidence the Russians rigged or affected the election. All they did was hack the Democratic National Committee. It's really arrogant to think that hacking the Democratic National Committee is hacking that election.
But meantime, former Georgia Governor Sonny Perdue is the front runner for Secretary of Agriculture. This is according to Fox News. Perdue previously met with Trump in November. He's said to have discussed domestic and international agricultural commodities. I want to get Steve Forbes' take. Do you think that are there any of these nominees for cabinet positions who don't get approved, who do not get the thumbs up? Is there anybody you're worried about?
No. If they've done their homework in terms of things on the side, things that would have come up in an FBI investigation, presumably they've done that job. But in terms of not blocking these people, very, very tough. The only thing they have is ideology. The election settled that. The Congress settled that. So unless they have a real scandal, they're going to go through.
Eric, I'm going to give you the final word on that. Does anybody not make it through confirmation?
There's always one. Even remember, Democrats couldn't approve Tom Daschle in 2009 for Barack Obama. There's always somebody who has a tax issue that comes up at the last minute. And we haven't actually seen the Office of Ethics hasn't gotten their tax packages yet, and that's part of the requirements for the confirmation process.
Daschle's, I believe, was over a car service that he got as a perk. That there were not at the time taxes paid on that. So that's...
Yeah, it scuttled his nomination.
Yeah, a sliver of something, I would think. Eric, thank you. It's so great of you to be here this morning. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Erick
Happy New
Erickson.
Year.